here we go. Back to work, guys. We got the co-main event of the evening. It's going down with Sean Strickland, Tarzan, Psycho Sean, whatever you want to call him. He's taking on the eraser, Paulo Costa. And this is a fascinating fight as well. Why? I'll tell you why. Because we've got two guys that both need to make a statement in this middleweight division if they want to get back into title contention. You got a lot of guys on the come up, and Ikram Aliskerov, guys that are trying to make their way into that relevant title conversation. And these guys kind of need to hold serve a little bit. They need to go out there and show people, hey, I'm still worthy of being considered in that spot. And you're talking about an Israel Adesanya who's been on the sidelines. He's coming back. He's likely to get a title opportunity. And I think that this is a spot where, you know, both these guys, Sean Strickland was a close split decision away from a title shot, and he lost to Jared Cannonier. Then he was a close split decision away from still being the champion after he won the belt. He beat Izzy. That was a one-sided fight. And then, unfortunately, you know, he loses that fight against Dricus Du Plessis. We did bet Du Plessis. We picked Du Plessis on this show as well. I thought Du Plessis was going to go out there and out-wrestle him. He went out there and out-wrestled him. But in any case, when you're looking at this fight, you know, it's a whole new can of worms because who's the more athletic guy? You know, who seems like the more dangerous, potent power puncher of the two? I mean, you would just look at the two of them and say Paulo Costa, right? The eraser. He's got the big muscles. He's a strong guy. You know, he's not afraid to go out there and swing leather with people. He's pretty durable historically. He got put down by Izzy. Obviously, that wasn't a great look, but he said he was drinking wine and he had all the excuses. He has not really got put down in similar fashion in his other fights, right? He's been hit by Yoel Romero. He's been battered about by Marvin Vettori with 100+ significant strikes for 5 rounds. And so you've definitely seen that Paulo Costa can get in there. He can go out there and, you know, swing hands. He can go out there and compete on the feet. But some of Paulo Costa's game has been a little bit something to be desired, right? He went out there against Robert Whittaker. I bet him in that fight. He was plus 200. And I have had really, you know, few and far between success betting Robert Whittaker fights because I've tried to fade him a million times. I think he's a great fighter, but I just think his chin is ready to go. And I'm thinking, man, Paulo Costa, big guy, muscles, athletic. Dricus Du Plessis just put a hole in this guy's head with the elbows on the ground. Like, this is the time for Paulo to go out there and show, hey, I can go out there and put this guy down. And what I saw is a guy in Paulo Costa who had a great moment, right? That spinning head kick, you know, he definitely had a case for winning the fight. But rounds 2 and 3, he just started to slow down a little bit. He wasn't putting out as much output. He was letting Rob back into the fight. And he's a guy that goes out there and throws. He competes, but he doesn't have nearly as much UFC experience. He doesn't have nearly as much 5-round experience as a guy like Strickland. And I do think that Strickland maybe doesn't get the due that he deserves for the quality of his career. You know, let's just go look at Sean Strickland's career in the UFC. He has put up a 15-6 record in the promotion, and his losses, I'm going to list them all for you right now. He lost to Dricus Du Plessis, current UFC middleweight champion, by split decision. He lost to Jared Cannonier, current top 5 ranked contender, via split decision. He got knocked out by Alex Poatan Pereira during his rise to the title. He's hardly lost a fight since, right? Got knocked out by Izzy, but otherwise he's been absolutely aces. He lost to Elizeu Zalewski dos Santos, also on this fight card, via knockout in the first round. And he lost to Kamaru Usman and Santiago Ponzinibbio when Ponzinibbio was at the peak of his powers, a ranked welterweight in the world, and it was a close fight. So, guys, Sean Strickland has only lost to the creme de la creme over the course of his career. You know, very, very good fighters. And I do think that when you're looking at Paulo Costa, his career is definitely solid, but it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors as far as I'm concerned. Now, when you're looking at Paulo, he definitely has the athleticism, the build, the strength, the knockout wins. I mean, there's a lot you can point to, but his recent losses are to Robert Whittaker, which is fair. Marvin Vettori, which is a little bit concerning. And I do think a little bit of a class below. And then Israel Adesanya, he got finished in that fight, was not very competitive. And he lost on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil back in the day as well. You look at the Yoel Romero fight, that was a close decision. He did win it. But here's the thing that, for me, makes it hard to get with a guy like Paulo Costa from a betting standpoint. Paulo Costa, guys, since 2019, has had the Yoel Romero fight, the Izzy fight that he lost. He had 2 canceled bouts. A Robert Whittaker fight he pulled out, a Jared Cannonier fight he pulled out. He was scheduled to fight Luke Rockhold after the loss to Marvin Vettori, and the bout was rescheduled. He fought Luke Rockhold and got the unanimous decision win. Everybody expected him to finish. Luke Rockhold, he was not able to do so. Then he goes out there and he has a scheduled bout with Ikram Aliskerov that gets canceled. Then he has a bout with Khamzat Chimaev get canceled due to an elbow infection. So the guy has had a very hard time staying healthy, getting to the octagon, getting in the octagon, and his recent run of results. I mean, he's 2-3 since 2019, and his wins are over Luke Rockhold and Yoel Romero, who are both on the senior circuit. So when you start to peel back the layers a little bit, Paulo's definitely a solid guy, but how much has he proved lately? Very little. Sean Strickland is one fight removed from a split decision loss for the title. So you could definitely see the classic letdown spot, right? What am I talking about? When you go from fighting for a title to a co-main event against a Paulo Costa, maybe you overlook him, maybe you don't show up in shape, maybe you don't care about it as much. I think Sean Strickland loves to be in a fight, period, point blank. I think he wants to go out there and fight this guy just because he doesn't like the cut of his jib. I think that he's just a guy that is willing to go out there and scrap, and I don't think he's afraid to fight anybody. I think he's kind of delusional even in a sense. Like, he'll go out there and fight anybody, even if they'll kick his ass. He just wants the smoke like that. So for me, Sean Strickland is a guy that it's easy to understand why he's favored to win this fight. Because I think he's got great 5-round cardio. He's got a ton of experience. He's fought in the UFC for a very long time. And he has a very potent game, which is, I'm going to go out there and throw a lot of strikes, and most of them are going to be at your head. Not an easy guy to beat. Like, yeah, you can mix it up a little bit. You can try and do some stuff. But unless you can put him down, unless you can hit him and hurt him, or you can wrestle him, he's a hard guy to get one over on. So then the question becomes, is Paulo Costa going to wrestle, or can he knock this guy out? And I think that the answer to can he knock him out is short. It's a fist fight between 285-pound men. Obviously, he can knock him out. He does throw wild hooks. I don't think he's nearly the striker that Alex Pereira is, right? Like, Alex Poatan Pereira is putting together combinations. He's setting traps. He's doing a lot of the right things with his striking. I think a lot of what Paulo does is horsepower, being an athlete, going out there and using a lot of aggression, right? A lot of forward pressure. But I just don't know that he has the in-between skills. Sean Strickland came into the UFC as a jiu-jitsu guy. And people forget this because they're newer fans of the sport, no problem there, or because they just haven't watched his old fights. But his first fight in the UFC, he secured his 4th rear naked choke of his career and his last submission win. So he hasn't gotten one since then. But Bubba McDaniel was a training partner of John Jones at the time. I think he came off of one of the Ultimate Fighter seasons as well, if my memory serves. And Bubba McDaniel ended up getting, his back taken, and Sean Strickland was able to get the rear naked choke. So when you look at Sean Strickland, he is a guy that has kind of abandoned his roots. He got in a motorcycle accident. He had some injuries. He was out of the octagon for a while, came back at middleweight, and he just looked like a guy who wants to go out there, throw hands the whole fight, and he's very potent with that. He's got a weird style, but he can kind of catch and pitch, and like when you're throwing at him, he'll move. He'll catch a little bit on his hands. He'll block it a little bit. He'll just shove it off to the side. He's not really afraid of contact, and then he will throw back, and he can make it count. He doesn't have that many knockdowns and that many knockouts in the UFC. But this is a personal opinion. I truly believe Sean likes to be out there for a long time. There were times, guys, he could have easily finished a guy like Uriah Hall, who I think he had on the verge of being, like quitting in the cage, right? Like, he had him in terrible positions. He's taking him down. He's looking for chokes. He's like, and he just didn't want to get him out of there. Like, he likes to be in there. He likes to hurt people. He likes to beat him up. The Izzy fight, he dropped him so bad in round 1, and he kind of just like was beating up on him along the fence and just like gave him some space, let him recover. He does not try to finish the fight as aggressively as most guys do. So for me, what I think that we could see take place here is, if Paulo Costa is going to win this fight, I think more often than not, he's going to do it early. I think you'd want to target Paulo in the early rounds 1, 2, 3. I don't know that we could trust him to compete as hard down the stretch. I don't know that he has the conditioning. Just look at his build. It's not like you're blaming him for not having the conditioning. You can either be a huge muscle freak or have good cardio, right? It's not typical that you could be both. And so Paulo has pretty solid cardio. He did that Marvin Vettori fight, but when you look at the when you look at the fight that Paulo put out there in his last time out, again, we saw that kind of regression in rounds 2 and 3 to a more tepid pace, I feel. And I think that this is a spot where Sean Strickland can be steady Eddie for 10 rounds, throwing the jab, throwing the 1-2, moving around a little bit, and I do think that you can wrestle Sean. I mentioned this. Abus Magomedov took him down, right? And I posted the video. You guys, again, can find this. If you look like at LiamPicksFights Strickland, or at LiamPicksFights Magomedov. It would probably come up either way. But like when you're looking for these videos and stuff, I do try and put out like exact reference to what I'm talking about. You could see Abus take down Sean against the fence and almost take his back. So is there a way you could out-grapple Sean? Yeah. Like he's not the most defensively responsible. He shows his back. You know, he's very frequent with that. But guys have a hard time putting him away. You know, he does find a way to work back up to his feet. The one thing that surprised me about the Duplessis fight is that Duplessis ended up having to go to decision there. I thought he was going to finish. I thought Duplessis had the tools, the skills, the ability to finish him. And I thought he was going to take him to the ground and beat him up. And he took him down. He landed some good shots, but he really had a hard time consolidating positions. And I can tell you guys, Dricus Duplessis is a good grappler. He's a very dangerous guy. He's a very physical grappler as well. Like, if you think Paulo's physical, you know, he is. But so is a guy like Dricus Duplessis, especially in the grappling. We've seen him go out there and pass people's guard brutally, just like, get over here. Robert Whittaker got destroyed in the grappling by Dricus Duplessis, which people forget. Shout out to my guy, Line Mover, called DDP decision. I just took the money line. You know me, dog. Keep my hands clean a bit. But I just thought to myself there that it was a fight where, you know, Strickland was going to get hurt with big shots. He was going to get hit with big shots, and he was going to, you know, be tested with his submission defense. Honestly, he did a great job in that fight, and I thought that was a super close fight. I thought it could have went either way. I thought Duplessis deserved the win. I thought his wrestling was effective. I thought it made Sean tired, but that's the other thing. When you see Sean Strickland get fatigued in fights, it comes not from striking. That's what I was saying. He could go 10 rounds on the feet, pop, 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 jabs. He could do that all day. But when you talk about the wrestling and the grappling, that is where you can make Strickland more fatigued. Do you know why? Because he doesn't go in and do 10 rounds of wrestling and grappling all the time. And in my humble opinion, he'd rather go in there and spar and do the stand-up fighting and hit the bag and go with the trainer and hit the pads. Like that just seems to me like what Sean prefers to do these days, especially coming off a motorcycle accident. So for me, it's a really difficult fight to call because I agree with undefeated sober Costa. Sean doesn't do well on the back foot. I think that's a fair point. However, I also think that Sean is a guy that can make people dance to the beat of his drum with that jab. You know, Paulo doesn't have very sophisticated defense, right? He doesn't move out of the way very well. Let's pull up UFC stats so I'm not talking out of my tuchus here. But I believe, just based off memory and based off the notes I put together for Patreon, that there's a negative striking differential for Paulo Costa, and that's true. So he's landing 6.2 significant strikes per minute and absorbing 6.4. I'm rounding, but 6.4 significant strikes per minute. I mean, that's just a ton of damage to be absorbing. And Paulo, like I mentioned, very durable guy, but let's just be serious. He's going to be at a 4-inch reach disadvantage here. And he doesn't have very good defense. He's absorbing 6 significant strikes per minute. Sean is landing about 5.91, so very close to 6 significant strikes per minute with the jab. You know, he's mostly just going pop, pop. So who's more likely to land? The guy going with shorter arms, throwing wide-ranging hooks and like overhands and crazy stuff, or the guy who's just sticking behind very potent, effective offense that's kind of been the backbone of fighting for as long as it's existed, like the guy who's throwing the jab. You know, for me, it just seems like, I don't want to be overly reductive, but I just like the skill set of a guy like Strickland a little bit better. He's got tons of experience, tons of 5-round experience. Now, I would prefer, if I'm betting on a fighter, that they try and aggressively get somebody out of there, right? Like, don't leave somebody hanging around because it gives them more chances to win. But I do think that Sean has a style that eats away at you. Even a guy like Duplessis was, you know, he was in a spot where, shout out to Line Mover says, this is a discount in my opinion. If Judge gave it to Sean in his last fight, he'd be minus 400 here. I think that's a little bit wide because I don't think they're ever going to make somebody like Paulo Costa bigger than like a plus 250 underdog, given the way he is, you know, a hard guy to put away, dangerous guy. But I do agree with you that this would probably be like Sean minus 250, minus 300. And by the way, he's not unfamiliar with being a big favorite throughout his UFC career. He's got a long track record of being the favorite and performing pretty well. He's lost a couple times in that favorite role. I think he was slightly favored to beat Alex Pereira So again, the market can be a fickle mistress, but in this case, we are seeing him favored to win the fight. Want to shout out to my guy, Alex Ramirez, says press the like button. Go ahead and do that if you don't mind. It really supports the channel. Easy way to help out. Helps other people find the video as well. If you guys haven't already, get subscribed to the channel because we're talking fights like this each and every week. Going to have plenty of content for UFC 302. And also, we're going to be back for Bets and Banter on Thursday like you know and love. So I appreciate the support. If you guys don't mind, go ahead and do those subtle little things to help us out. Now, want to just say this before we move on to the next fight on the card, which is fight numbers, guys. Shout out to John Kelly. Shout out to our guy Pepe Silvia as well on Twitter today, honoring his bet. He got the Diego Lopez, quote across his thigh. So he got the tattoo, honored the tattoo bet. And the fight numbers guys have been killing it in terms of their picks. But really, guys, for me, I'm an originator, right? I have my own information. I come up with my own bets. So they offer service there. Hey, that's good stuff. But when you're looking at what I use it for, it's the odds screen. And I'm looking right now, the best available odds on Dustin Poirier, plus 470 over at Pinnacle Sportsbook. Islam Makhachev, the best available odds, minus 530 at Bet Rivers. Why am I telling you this? Because if you guys are looking to make profits betting on mixed martial arts fights, you have to get the best of the number. When you're talking about minus 530 on Islam Makhachev, you could get that, or you could go to another house and pay minus 650. Obviously, you want to get the one that's lower, right? You want to get a better price for your fighter. How about if I'm betting an underdog like Dustin Poirier? Do I want to go take the plus 400 that's on one sportsbook, the plus 360s that are out there on Dustin Poirier? God, no. I want to go take the plus 460, right? You can get $1 better on Dustin Poirier at one book in the market compared to another. It's a no-brainer to go get the maximum value that you can. And I'm using the tools over at Fight Numbers. They've got the best available prices on the odds board. That's for the totals as well as for the money lines. So talking about the totals, the over for the main event, minus 160 to the over for the Dustin Poirier fight. That's at Borgata Sportsbook, plus 145 to the under. That is at Bet Rivers. So again, Bet Rivers has the best price on Makhachev and the under. Now let's talk about that co-main event that we discussed. Bet365, minus 210 on Sean Strickland, best available price, plus 190, the comeback on the eraser, Paulo Costa, and that's again at Bet Rivers. So wanted to shout out those numbers, wanted to give you guys an idea of what we're working with. And so Fight Numbers, promo code Liam, they will hook you up with a discount on your first month subscription, and it's all in the description box below if you're looking for more information.